if you could test drive my brain, you would see that there is no chronic guilt and chronic anxiety, and you'd be in the position like you were before you got stuck with chronic severe OCD, okay? But you'd want to test drive it to see what it's like in all terrain. So for example, if you compare it to a motorbike, you want to see what it leans like on the corners. Does the tire skid out? Where does it get the traction? What's it going like in terms of acceleration? How quickly do the brakes stop it? How does that feel? You want to do that with the brain. So you'd be thinking, okay, let's test it with some false memories, some old real events, some thoughts about the existential or whatever things that you could be latched on. And you'd notice it doesn't really care if it goes there. There's no 0 to 100 response. There's no error there. There's nothing that it thinks, oh, it's worth warranting it warrants a lot of time being spent there, because it doesn't need it, because it can just see that it's not going to get that reaction. So what tends to happen is then you look at all those difficult situations and you're just bored of them. You don't even think of venturing into them. And if you do venture into them and you go into that corner fast, you realize, like, okay, the traction's good here. This is going to grip here on this corner. This is going to go round fine. I can lean like that, no problem. I can lean right over, no problem, and it's good. And that's what it would feel like, right? And you've got to think to yourself, in your journey, what your brain feels like now and where are you trying to get it, right? At the moment, it's a clunky old gearbox, right? And you're trying to really, really improve that. And that's why when you're in your situation now, you've got the old car, but you haven't experienced the new car. So you're thinking like, oh, this isn't too bad. Yeah, I'm used to this as long as I do these 100 little movements to keep it going, right? That you know personally from driving it for so long, but you don't need to, right? It's like if you went to power steering and you had a car with no power steering, what would it be like? You'd be like, fuck, I really don't want to go back to no power steering. Yeah, people still do drive classic cars with no power steering, but when it actually comes to the driving experience, it's a hell of a lot easier, right? Imagine you taking someone from the past who'd never experienced power steering and you brought them to the future and they did, right? What do you think they're going to feel? What do you think they're going to think? Be like, this is incredible, right? Whole different driving experience. And that's what it's like with the brain, okay? And so you have got to think, what are you putting the energy in for? Like, when you're stuck, you think, oh, this is just how it operates. I'm not too bad today. That's because you've never experienced the new car. You've never experienced that. When you experience that, then you think, that is a whole leap ahead. Like, when I recovered, it was like, that is literally like so many extra batteries of energy. That's literally so plugged into life. And you can't really experience that till you're in a position. So like, say, for example, you had somebody who's got very poor lifestyle habits, lays on the couch all the time watching Netflix, and then you put them in the brain of somebody who's like working out really hard, running a successful business, or good at sport, or a great family life, and you just see all these different things. When you compare the two, it's like, shit, I don't want to go back to the old. But when you haven't had the new, you don't know what it's like. So if you really visualize what you're trying to achieve, right? It's like if somebody says, okay, I want to visualize, and today, in today's era, you've got too much crap going on with like people who spend all their time visualizing with mood boards and all this stuff and achieve very little, which is so common today in social media world. But you do need to do some visualizing, right? If you want to be a top runner, if you go and see a top runner that's nowhere near your level. Like I remember when I used to swim at school, right? I was swimming all the time and I was doing a lot of swimming training. And then I got into like a school's competition, right? And I got into that school's competition and I remember standing by the pool. I was young, I think probably about 10, no, not 10, probably about 12. And I stood there next to the pool and I was the best swimmer in like one of the best swimmers in the year, right? And then I watched a kid get in the pool who was one of the best in the region. His swimming was a completely different league to anything I'd seen with my own eyes. In my world, I was like, hey, I'm a great swimmer. Like nobody's going to come close to me. I can't see how they can beat me. Then seeing that, it was like in 1 second, uh-oh, that's a game changer. It's like if you go to a conference for something, say you're into CrossFit, and you're really good at CrossFit in your gym. And then you go to a CrossFit conference, you realize you're nothing, right? Because when you are doing something at a high level, unless you see the other levels, you don't realize the levels in the game, okay? And so that's exactly what it's like, right? And it's really important to be aware of that, because then you can see how far you've got to take it. You don't have to be an OCD champion. You don't have to have the knowledge, for example, that I have of OCD is not needed to recover, right? This has been my whole life's work. You don't need that, right? I have this knowledge because I have to work with very hard cases of OCD. But for recovery, you need a lot less knowledge, but you need a lot more than you think, right? To get in that swimming pool and swim, I needed swimming ability. It was better than a lot of people because a lot of people can't swim. But to beat that guy in that race, I had to be the best of the best of the best. And him, if he went to the country, race for the country, he would suddenly realize, shit, this is another level, or world level, completely different, right? It's like when you watch sports on TV. I used to watch a lot of boxing, and you watch people winning. In boxing, and what happens is, if you look at them, for example, winning in Europe, winning in the UK, winning a world title. If you look at anything like that, what you see is that, I forgot what I was going to say about OCD just then. I had a point that I wanted to say. Is what you're doing is you've got to look at the layers of OCD recovery as sort of, I don't want to make this sound compulsive, but like, the problem with OCD is we tend to look for an imaginary key, for an imaginary lock in our mind to get a release, and the key and the lock don't exist. And you're like, what? What do you mean? Well, I'll explain, and then I'll go back to that other point. When you're in false memory OCD, you're mentally ruminating about the past 24/7 from every angle. You think a millimeter away from your fingers is a key for freedom, but the key doesn't exist. That key isn't a thing that you're going to grasp, because that key doesn't fit the lock that you're looking for, and the lock that you're looking for doesn't even exist, because the way out from it is not in that direction at all. It's a complete illusionary trap. Freedom from recovery comes from a depth of acceptance, changing relationship with OCD, exposures, breaking down fears. Not all of these components necessarily needed, depending on each person's situation, but usually in most situations, a deeper level of acceptance to change the internal framework that OCD operates in. Right. Now, in boxing, what you have is a situation where if somebody is winning, and they are the number one in what they do in the UK, right? They're in a situation where, to them, they think freedom is, okay, I've done that, now I'm free, and the next level up isn't that far because I've already gone through a certain number of locks. What they don't realize is that the lock that they need to get to where they want, which is world title, isn't exactly the same as how they're viewing it. And let me explain why. When you get through the first lock, which is being the best boxer in the UK, you are in a position where you think, okay, that's now that done, now I just need to do the next one. But it isn't, because the shift from UK to world is a whole different level. And then winning the world title to being like a sort of a world champion that's undisputed is a whole other level. And then to be that through time, where different weight classes and so on, you're talking about whole other levels. There's a sort of elite level. The difference between winning the title and just that elite consistent level is very, very different, right? So it's not just one lock, next lock. It's like one lock, giant lock, and completely different direction, completely different thing, right? And that's what it's like in OCD recovery to some extent. People say to me like, hey, I'm not doing too bad with mindfulness. And I'm like, yeah, you just don't know the next gear. The next gear is not just, I'm not doing too bad with mindfulness. It's got to be, it's like a much further gear that sort of leaves then OCD sort of powerless to operate. And if I could you could test drive that, you'd be like, I see completely why. You could throw anything at it, life event, and it's not going to change. It's not going to get stuck in that chronic cycle. It's a completely different league to that just basic mindfulness with ups and downs and setbacks occasionally and always on guard for it. Like, one is living with it stuck and one is like freedom, right? And I can't highlight that enough, that difference, because that's what it's like. That is really what it's like. It's like AI and humans. Like, you look at all the humans today, they're watching AI and they're like, yay, AI has done this. Yay, AI has done that. Oh, wow, they've just introduced AI at my company. AI spits out gold until it becomes drama, big drama, and then problem, right? AI will go a bit like this. I'm not an expert on AI, but I know the basics. Everyone will be rejoicing about AI on everything. Oh my God, it's done that. Oh my God, it's done this. And then suddenly it's going to be like, oh my God, I've lost my job. Oh my God, the next job I'm going for is now gone with AI. Oh my God, all the jobs in my sector have now gone. Oh my God, now it's presenting as a risk to humanity. Oh my God, the people have been rushing it too much, right? You know, these things, AI like looks great on all the little things because people aren't zooming out and looking at the big picture. I'm not saying AI, from an AI doom, that like, oh, just AI is like a thing that is a guaranteed wipeout. No, I'm saying that, you know, AI has a couple of options. It's going to either become like a godlike AI that changes our whole world where we're not working anymore, we can live forever and all these different things that people are banking on, and hence why there's so much growth in AI. But then there's also the AI risk that AI wipes us out because it's an advanced, AI is an advanced, it's much smarter than us by so far. It's like comparing us to a slug and then even more. So there's the risk of that it just decides it wants to go on some particular objective that doesn't really involve taking care of humans too much, which is the problem with trying to align it, the alignment problem, and that they work on. But all these things are complex and nuanced, and they aren't like the basic things that people see. What people see with OCD recovery is this: oh, you just change your relationship with thoughts. Thoughts are thoughts. You leave it there, you move on. No, that's going to get you the same result that the majority of OCD sufferers that are stuck up and down, living with it, but it calls the shots on their life. And then OCD is their life. They've got life. Like, you never hear me describe my life as like, yeah, I've got OCD. Some days are hard, some days are not. I used to describe it like that. OCD is completely insignificant to me. It doesn't even come into my life. It's like if I had an ingrowing toenail today, okay, realistically, what's going to happen? You're going to put your foot in some warm water. It's probably going to go down. And then in the scheme of your life, issue about it, very little. You're barely going to notice it. That's like how insignificant OCD is. It's like not even come into spectrum. I don't wake up thinking like, oh, how is the OCD going to be today? I never even think about it because it's just not there like that, right? It's just like, I can't tell I've got it. And on a day-to-day basis, I'm only talking about OCD because I work with OCD. So I talk about OCD all the time. But for me, there's no OCD, there's no suffering, there's no nothing going on there. It's like, it's completely insignificant to my life. And so that's to show you the levels of recovery.